Okay. So, in my last year at university, a long time ago now, some of you have heard this story, haven't you? Yeah. I was living with these two boys who were not very domesticated. And one of them, called Tom, had a birthday. And he wanted a dinner party for his birthday, but he couldn't cook. So I offered to cook. Back then I had 2 meals that I could offer up. I'm afraid it's reduced since then. But the 2 meals were spaghetti bolognese and something with chicken, as it was known. So I decided to go with the spaghetti bolognese. And on the day of the party, Tom's friends came round. And incredibly, they were all girls. But they weren't any girls. They were all really quite attractive and very, very posh. So I made the spaghetti bolognese, and my recollection is that it really was quite delicious. But the sight of all these girls obviously went to my head. Because I made the dish, I served it all up, and then I discovered that I had miscounted. There was none left for me. So I actually sat down at this dinner party with all these rather attractive girls and pretended that I had already eaten. Which is all you can do. You can't really say to a load of people you don't know, can I just have a little bit off your plate? Even though they did offer. It was just incredibly embarrassing and very stupid. And depending on the occasion, these things often are very embarrassing, aren't they? I still remember my oldest sister's wedding. She was married in 1979, when honestly I was just a very small boy. The reception was in a hotel in Gravesend, which needless to say is now derelict. Back then, some of you will remember this, back then it was the height of sophistication to serve at every social function Black Forest Gateau. You remember? But at my sister's wedding, the hotel served up cheesecake. And I can remember to this day the shame of serving up cheesecake when what had been ordered was Black Forest Gateau. Why did the hotel do this? Because they had run out of Gateau. But that was no excuse. There was anger, there were tears, letters were written, and refunds were given. But all that is nothing. All of that is absolutely nothing compared to a Galilean wedding where the wine has run out. Okay, you've got to understand, a wedding in Galilee 2,000 years ago was a massive affair. It went on for about a week. Okay, if you think about it, if you have to walk 20 or 30 miles to get there, you're not just going to go for the evening do, are you? You're going to stay for a few days. Please understand this as well. The responsibility for hospitality at a Galilean wedding fell squarely on the bridegroom. It would have been good news for me. The bride didn't pay anything. The bride's family didn't pay anything. The bridegroom had to entertain everybody. And here, he hasn't done it. They have no more wine. And this is not something that you can laugh off like a bit of spaghetti bolognese. This is a disgrace. It is going to be a disastrous start to this young couple's married life. Shame, embarrassment. I mean, this is not Black Forest Gateau. This is really, really serious. It just so happens that Mary and Jesus' disciples are all at this wedding. Okay? Mary is told, she tells Jesus. She knows he can do something. To begin with, he says, my hour has not yet come. We might come back to that, but she persists. And as always the case with Jesus, her persistence is rewarded. I'd love you now to look with me at verse 6, which is the last verse of the first reading. Just have a look down there with me. And let me read it to you. Nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kind used by the Jews for ceremonial washing, each holding from 20 to 30 gallons. Please notice that is an awful lot of water, right? 6 enormous jars. They can hold all that water. Verse 7, so I'm sorry, you've got to flick on to the next reading. Verse 7, Jesus says, fill them. Fill up these jars. And they are all filled up to the brim with water. Then Jesus says, take some of it to the master of the banquet. And they did. And the master tasted the water that had been turned into wine. Then he calls the bridegroom aside. Just remember, the bridegroom has been facing absolute ruin here. He has been in the firing line for doing something absolutely appalling. But now, because of Jesus, it's the bridegroom who gets the credit. Right at the end of verse 10, the master of the banquet says, you have saved the best till now. You saved the best till last. Nobody does that. Let me read you a quote from an author called Thomas Nagel. Don't know if you've read anything by him, I haven't, but I came across this quote. This is what he says. He says, I want atheism to be true. In other words, I don't want there to be a God. It isn't just that I don't believe in God and naturally hope that I'm right. It is that I hope there is no God. I don't want there to be a God. I don't want the universe to be like that. You see, he thinks, like so many people we meet, he thinks that religion ruins things. He thinks that wherever people have a God, it's restrictive, it's dull, it's grey, it's oppressive, it's life-destroying. That's what God is like. And you know what? When it comes to fake gods and fake religion, I think he's got a point. That's what life is like. But what is the real God really like? Would the real God please stand up? Well, this story is a parable to show us what the real God is like. Jesus, who, if you remember, is God himself, Jesus, says John, he comes to a wedding where the wine has run out. Does Jesus say, good, they've all had too much to drink already? Does he say, never mind, it's only a wedding, they can either drink water or go home early? No, he doesn't say anything like that. He takes this absolutely vast amount of water. If you're a mathematician, you may have worked out, we're talking about 750 litres of water, and he turns every single drop of it into wine. All of it? Yes. The real God produces 1,000 bottles of wine at a wedding where the guests have already had too much to drink. That's what the real God is like. But there's more. What sort of wine does the real God produce? Is it the sort of plonk that you and I bring back from France every summer? No. It is the best wine. It is the choicest wine. What are you playing at, says the master of the banquet. No one brings out the best wine last. You serve that up before everyone gets drunk. Not the real God. Not the real God, because the real God is abundantly, extravagantly generous and life-enhancing. Do you know, when I was a small boy, another story from my small boyhood, we used to go and visit my godparents. And whenever we went to my godparents' house, my godmother would always produce a plate of the most enormous cream cakes. I don't know where she got them, but we never had anything like that in our house. And every time my godmother would say, "Which one would you like, Louis? Which one are you going to have?" And I just didn't know what to. I was just thinking, should I have this one or should I have that one? And my mother would say, "He'll never eat one of those. You won't eat one of those, will you, Louis? You won't manage one of those. Give him a little slice. Just give him a little tiny slice, a little slither." And I'm going, "No, of course I can eat one of those cream cakes." It was agony. It was agony for a small child to be deprived of a large cream cake. Do you know, you've got to understand, Jesus does not want to give you the crumbs. Jesus does not want to give you a little miserable slice. Jesus wants to give you the whole thing. He wants to give you all of it. All of it. He wants to give you the best of all of it. Do you know, I love this. One of the great themes of John's gospel is the life that Jesus comes to bring. John 10 verse 10 says, John 10 verse 10, "I have come," says Jesus, "I have come to give them life and life to the full." Life to the full. And here in John chapter 2, we get a picture of what life to the full looks like. Jesus has not come to take away our joy. Jesus has come to give us real joy. He's come to give us new joy. And the symbol for that is this new wine. New wine. Let me say a quick word about wine, lest we get carried away. There is a long and there is a very honourable tradition in the Christian church of abstaining from alcohol, not drinking alcohol. In fact, I dare to say that nearly all of my great Christian heroes, people like Eric Liddell, I doubt Eric Liddell ever drank a drop of alcohol in his life. But I think the issue is not wine. The issue is how we have abused wine. It seems very clear to me from passages like this that Christians can enjoy wine, and alcoholic drinks. But the issue is, friends, drunkenness. So Paul the Apostle, he says, "Do not get drunk on wine because it leads to debauchery." The issue is addiction and all of the misery that goes with those things, however mild they may be. So here's the thing I want to say to you this morning. In a culture or in a family where alcohol is a problem, it may well be the wise and godly thing to abstain from alcohol. In a situation where there isn't much money, and you know what? Wine and spirits, they cost a lot, don't they? Where there isn't much money, the wise and the godly thing may be to abstain from alcohol. But otherwise, the great thing is, because we're talking about the real God, all his gifts are to be enjoyed with thanksgiving. So what is God like? Not the fake God, not the thing that man was talking about in his quotation, the real God. What is the real God like? He is wonderfully and he is extravagantly generous and he is extravagantly life-enhancing. He wants to give you the best. The best. I hope that's good news. It should be. But I want to ask just a couple of questions, okay? So interesting this. Why choose wine as the picture? And why do it at a wedding? Why choose wine as the picture and why do it at a wedding? Because to be honest, for some of us, if there had been an abundance of cream cakes, that would have been great, wouldn't it? Or an abundance of marshmallows or an abundance of caviar. But these little facts are very important. Every detail is significant. John says in verse 11, right at the end there, John says, what Jesus did here in Cana of Galilee was the first of the signs through which he revealed his glory. So yes, Jesus very quietly, did you notice he does it very discreetly? He very quietly and discreetly rescues this wedding in Galilee. And he saves this couple from disgrace. But that is not the point of the story. That is not the point. Every miracle in John is called a sign or a signpost because it's there to point to something else. So, here we go. I've got a fire exit sign here. For some reason, I found it lying on the floor in the vestry. It's not meant to be on the floor. It's not meant to be in my hand, okay? So let's just pretend for a second that it's functioning as it's meant to. In fact, amazingly, there's one here on the doorway into the vestry, okay? It says fire exit. Now, what I want to say to you is, let's pretend this is up on the wall. There's another one there, look, if you can't see that one, there's one there. Now, here's the thing, right? In the event of a fire in this building, can I just tell you, can I warn you, it would be catastrophic if, in the event of a fire, we simply go and congregate around the signpost. If we all go to the door or that door and wait there by the signpost, we will die. That's not what a signpost is there for. The signpost says, keep going. Keep going because the fire exit is through there. The fire exit is through there. Do not settle for the sign. Go for what it points to. Okay? That's absolutely obvious, isn't it? Except that when it comes to the Bible, we often want to settle for the sign and we're not prepared to look at what it points to. So what does it point to here? How does this sign reveal Jesus' glory? Because it says here that when his disciples saw what he had done, they believed in him. So let's think about the wine. Let's just think about the wine. Why? Why does he turn water into wine? What does it mean? Well, let me just tell you, okay? If you had grown up in a Jewish household, okay, you would have grown up with prophet after prophet. You would have grown up with Isaiah, with Jeremiah, with Amos, with Joel, prophet after prophet, who said that one day God himself would come to rescue his people. And then the prophet said that age, that time when God comes to rescue his people, it will be characterized by an abundance of new wine, so abundant that it will be dripping from the mountains and flowing from the hills. And then you turn up to this little wedding in rural Galilee and you find this guy Jesus who miraculously turns water abundantly into new wine, and you might just start to think, do you know what? This guy Jesus is the one the prophets were all speaking about. And if you started to think that, you would be right. The wine points to Jesus as the person about whom the whole of the Old Testament is speaking. But there's more. There's just a little bit more. What you've got to know as well is that all through the Bible, God's relationship with his people is pictured as a marriage. It's pictured as a wedding feast. But a marriage, a covenant relationship that's gone wrong, that's broken, that needs fixing. And this first sign that Jesus does happens at a marriage. It happens at a wedding where the bridegroom has messed up, where the bridegroom has failed. But if you're looking really carefully, do you see what Jesus does? Did you see what Jesus does? Jesus steps in and he takes the role of the bridegroom. And he exceeds all expectations. Do you see that? The sign, the thing that Jesus does is that he saves a wedding in rural Galilee. But what it points to is that Jesus is the bridegroom who is going to rescue, who is going to restore, who is going to recreate the relationship between God and his people. So if you were to go to the end of the Bible, and you can read this for yourself, if you were to go to Revelation chapter 19, the last book in the Bible, heaven is pictured as a wedding feast, a glorious wedding feast with an abundance of wine. Who is the bridegroom at their heavenly wedding feast? It's Jesus. It's Jesus. He's named there in Revelation. Who is the bride at their heavenly wedding feast? Who do you think the bride is? It's you, the church. Exactly. Those who have been washed clean in the blood of the Lamb. Wow. Do you know, many people, like that guy I quoted, they hope there is no God because he's just a hard taskmaster and he is an oppressive spoilsport. Weren't we having a conversation a bit like that in the week? He's a misery. But please, look at the sign. Look at the sign and look at what it points to. Jesus is the God who wants to bless us abundantly. Life to the full, not just in eternity, but now. Jesus is the Messiah who brings in the messianic age. Not yet fully, not completely, but this new wine is a foretaste of heaven. And Jesus is the bridegroom who will rescue the wedding through rescuing the bride. Do you see that? Jesus rescues the wedding through rescuing the bride. Do you know, if the 3 words last week were come and see, the 3 words this week are taste and see. Taste and see what the real God is like.